The air in the underground pit smelled like sweat and fear. Jake Martinez wiped his hands on his dirty gray uniform and picked up another piece of broken equipment. The metal was heavy in his calloused fingers. 3 years of this work had made his hands tough and his back strong, but his mind stayed sharp. Above him, the Viridian guards watched from their platforms. Their green scales caught the harsh light from the ceiling. Each alien stood 8 feet tall with claws that could cut through steel. They looked down at the humans working below like farmers watching cattle. Jake had been a soldier once. A good one. He knew how to fight, how to think, how to win. But that was before the Viridians came to Earth, before the war that lasted only 6 months, before humanity bowed down to save itself from total destruction. Now he was slave number 4147. The metal collar around his neck reminded him every day. It would shock him if he tried to leave the work area. It would kill him if he fought back. Or so the Viridians thought. "Jake, they're coming down here again," whispered Lisa Thompson from across the room. She was fixing a computer terminal with tools that looked too big for her small hands. Lisa used to study alien life forms back on Earth. Now she studied the aliens who owned her. Jake looked up and saw them. 5 Viridians walking down the metal stairs. Their claws clicked on each step. The one in front wore red armor with gold markings. She was young for a Viridian, maybe 20 in their years. Her name was Zexithara, and she was the worst of them. All Zexithara loved to hurt humans. She would find reasons to punish them. Sometimes she didn't need reasons at all. The other Viridians followed her because she was from a noble family. Her father commanded 3-star systems. The humans in the pit stopped working. They knew better than to keep moving when Viridians came close. Jake set down his tools and stood straight. His eyes stayed on the floor. Looking directly at a Viridian was against the rules. "Look at these pathetic creatures," Zexithara said in her hissing voice. She spoke the human language perfectly, but she made it sound ugly. "They used to think they ruled a planet. Now they can barely fix our machines." The other Viridians laughed. It was a sound like grinding metal. Zexithara walked between the human workers. Her claws dragged across the metal workbenches, leaving scratches. She stopped in front of an old man named Pete, who was sorting spare parts. Pete had been a factory manager on Earth. Now his hands shook as he tried to work. "This one is too slow," she said. "Perhaps he needs motivation." She raised her clawed hand. Pete closed his eyes and waited for the pain. But Jake stepped forward. "The work will be done on time," Jake said quietly. He still didn't look up, but his voice was steady. Zexithara turned toward him. Her yellow eyes narrowed. "Did this slave just speak to me without permission?" The pit went silent. Even the machine seemed to stop humming. Lisa held her breath. The other humans froze where they stood. Speaking out of turn could mean death. "I said the work will be done on time," Jake repeated. His hands hung loose at his sides, but Lisa could see the muscles in his arms were tight. Zexithara walked slowly toward Jake. Each step echoed in the quiet room. When she reached him, she leaned down until her face was close to his. Her breath smelled like raw meat. "You think you can protect the old human?" she whispered. "How touching. Tell me, slave, what did you do before you came here?" "I was a Marine," Jake said. "Combat engineer. A warrior." Zexithara straightened up and laughed. The sound made the humans flinch. "Do you hear this? The human thinks he was a warrior." The other Viridians joined her laughter. One of them, a male with darker scales, stepped forward. "Perhaps he still believes he can fight Zexithara." "Yes," she said, her eyes brightening with a cruel light. "Perhaps he does. Tell me, former warrior, do you remember how to fight?" Jake finally looked up and met her eyes. "I remember everything." Zexithara's smile showed rows of sharp teeth. "Excellent. Then you will not disappoint me in the arena." The arena. Every human in the pit knew what that meant. It was where Viridians made humans fight for entertainment. Sometimes humans fought each other. Sometimes they fought alien creatures. Most of the time they died. "I challenge you to single combat." Zexthera announced loud enough for everyone to hear. Let us see if human warriors are anything more than stories. Jake nodded once. I accept. Wonderful. Zexthera clapped her clawed hands together. Guards, prepare the arena. I want every Viridian in the colony to see this. They should witness how easily I crush a human warrior. The guards moved quickly to follow her orders. One of them spoke into a communication device. Soon, every Viridian on the planet would know about the fight. They would come to watch their champion destroy another human spirit. Lisa caught Jake's eye. She wanted to say something to tell him not to do this, but she knew why he had spoken up. Pete was 70 years old. His heart was weak. He wouldn't survive whatever punishment Zexthera had planned. The arena will be ready in 1 hour, Zexthera said. Use that time to pray to whatever weak gods humans believe in. It will be the last hour of your miserable life. She turned and walked away, her entourage following. Their laughter echoed off the walls as they climbed the stairs. When they were gone, Pete grabbed Jake's arm. You shouldn't have done that, son. She'll kill you. Jake looked at the old man's frightened face. Maybe, but she won't kill you. There has to be another way, Lisa said. She came over and stood close to them. We could report that the work is behind schedule. Make her angry at the supervisors instead. Jake shook his head. She was looking for a reason to hurt someone today. If not Pete, then someone else. This way, it's just me. You can't win, Pete said. She's twice your size, and 3 times as strong. Her claws can cut through metal. I know, Jake said, but I don't have to win. I just have to show them that humans don't break easily. The other workers had gone back to their tasks, but Jake could feel them watching him. Some looked sad. Others looked afraid. A few looked angry that he had brought trouble down on all of them, but Lisa saw something different in his eyes. She had known Jake for 2 years now. She had watched him work, watched him think, watched him help other humans when the guards weren't looking. She knew he was planning something. What aren't you telling me? She whispered. Jake picked up his tools and went back to work. His hands moved automatically while his mind focused on other things. On 3 years of watching Viridians move, 3 years of listening to them talk, 3 years of learning everything he could about the aliens who thought they owned him. Just trust me, he said quietly. And be ready. Ready for what? Jake smiled for the first time in weeks. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had been waiting patiently for his moment to come. You'll know when it happens. The arena was carved from black stone deep beneath the Viridian Command Center. Rows of seats rose up in circles around a fighting pit 20 feet across. Energy barriers hummed at the edges, creating walls of blue light that nothing could pass. Jake stood in the holding cell next to the arena. Through the metal bars, he could hear hundreds of Viridian voices getting louder and more excited. Word had spread fast across the colony. Every alien wanted to see their champion crush another human. Lisa pressed her face against the bars of the viewing cage where human slaves were forced to watch. She had been brought here with 20 other humans to witness what would happen to anyone who challenged their masters. This is madness, whispered Dr. Robert Kim, an elderly human who used to be a surgeon. She will tear him apart in seconds. Maybe that's what he wants, said Maria Santos, a former teacher. Maybe he's tired of living like this. Lisa shook her head. She knew Jake better than the others. He wasn't giving up. He was planning something. But what could one human do against a Viridian warrior? In the arena control room above, High Commander Krelnoth watched the preparations. He was older than most Viridians, with darker scales and scars from many battles. His yellow eyes studied the readouts on his screens. The betting pools are quite active, said his aide, a younger Viridian, named Dexmar. Some are wagering on how many seconds the human will last. And what is the longest estimate? Krelnoth asked. 30 seconds, sir. Though most believe it will be less than 10. Krelnoth nodded. He had seen humans fight before. They were weak creatures with soft skin and no natural weapons. Even their strongest warriors fell quickly to Viridian claws. In her private preparation room, Zexithara stretched her muscles and examined her claws. Each one was as sharp as a blade and harder than steel. She had killed 12 humans in arena combat over the past 2 years. This would be number 13. Her servant, an old Viridian female named Caxtha, brought her ceremonial armor. It was not needed for protection against a human, but it looked impressive for the crowd. "You seem very confident, young mistress," Caxtha said as she helped attach the armor pieces. "Why should I not be?" Zexithara replied. "The human is nothing, a broken slave who thinks he still remembers how to fight." "He was a warrior once," Caxtha said carefully. "On his homeworld." Zexithara laughed. "Human warriors are a joke. We conquered their entire planet in 6 months. If they had been real warriors, the war would have lasted longer." She stood and admired herself in the mirror. The red and gold armor made her look magnificent. The crowd would love the show she was about to give them. Down in the holding cell, Jake sat quietly on a stone bench. His eyes were closed, but he was not sleeping. He was remembering. 3 years of watching Viridians walk, fight, and move. 3 years of fixing their equipment and learning how their bodies worked. A guard came to the cell door. This one was different from the others. His scales were brown instead of green, and he was smaller than most Viridians. His name was Velkoth, and he had always been less cruel than the others. "It is time, human," Velkoth said. But his voice was quiet, almost sad. Jake opened his eyes and stood up. "Tell me something, Velkoth. Do you think this is right?" The Viridian guard looked surprised. Humans were not supposed to ask questions like that. "Right or wrong does not matter. It is the way things are." "But do you think it's right?" Jake asked again. Velkoth was quiet for a long moment. "I think many things in this universe are not right, but I am just a guard. I do not make the rules." "No," Jake said as he walked toward the cell door, "but you can choose how you follow them." The guard opened the door and led Jake through the tunnels toward the arena. Other Viridian guards joined them as they walked. Jake could hear the crowd getting louder with each step. They reached a large metal door marked with Viridian symbols. Beyond it was the arena floor. Jake could see bright lights and hear hundreds of voices chanting Zexithara's name. "Any last words, human?" asked one of the guards. Jake looked at him calmly. "Yes. When this is over, remember that we are not what you think we are." The guard laughed. "You will be dead. What you are will not matter." The metal door opened with a loud clang. Jake walked into the arena, and the crowd exploded with noise. Viridians were standing and cheering, their claws raised, in the air. Some threw pieces of meat onto the arena floor. Jake walked to the center of the circle and looked up at the crowd. He found the section where the human slaves were kept behind bars. Lisa was there, her face pale with worry. He nodded to her once, then looked away. A loud horn sounded and the crowd quieted down. High Commander Krelnoth's voice came from speakers around the arena. "Citizens of the Viridian Empire," his voice boomed. "Today we witness the foolishness of a human slave who believes he can challenge our superior race." The crowd cheered and hissed their approval. "In this corner," Krelnoth continued, "we have our champion, the noble warrior Zexithara of the House of Golden Claws." Another door opened across the arena. Zexithara stepped out wearing her ceremonial armor. She raised her claws above her head, and the crowd went wild. She was beautiful and terrible, like a living weapon made of scales and sharp edges. She walked slowly across the arena floor, taking her time. This was her moment of glory. Every step was calculated to build excitement in the crowd. When she reached the center, she stopped 10 feet away from Jake and smiled her predator's smile. "Look at you," she said loud enough for the crowd to hear. "So small, so weak. Your people were right to surrender to us." Jake said nothing. He watched her stance, the way she distributed her weight, the way her armor fitted around her joints. "I have killed 12 of your kind in this arena," she continued. Each one begged for mercy at the end. "Will you beg, little human?" "No," Jake said simply. Zexthera's smile grew wider. "We will see. Guards, explain the rules to the spectators." Velkoth stepped forward with a speaking device. "Combat will be hand-to-hand only. No weapons except natural ones. The fight continues until one combatant yields, becomes unconscious, or dies." The crowd cheered at the word, dies. "The energy barriers will prevent escape," Velkoth continued. "Both fighters will enter the circle when the signal sounds." Zexithera removed her ceremonial armor piece by piece. Underneath, her scales were perfect green metal. Her claws caught the light like polished knives. Her muscles rippled under her skin as she moved. Jake took off his gray slave uniform. His human skin looked pale and soft next to her armored hide. The crowd laughed at the difference between them. Some Viridians made jokes about how easily she would cut through him. "Perhaps I should use only one arm," Zexthera called out to the crowd. "To make it more interesting." The crowd loved this. Their laughter echoed off the stone walls. "Or maybe I should fight with my eyes closed," she added. "The human moves so slowly I probably would not notice the difference." More laughter. Even some of the human slaves looked away. They could not bear to watch what was about to happen. But Lisa kept watching. She saw something the others missed. Jake was not afraid. His breathing was calm and steady. His eyes never left Zexithara, but not with fear. He was studying her like a puzzle he was about to solve. The two fighters stepped into the energy circle. The barriers hummed louder as they activated. Now there was no escape for either of them. High Commander Krell Noth raised his hand for silence. "Let the combat begin in 3, 2, 1. A deep bell rang once through the arena. The fight had started. The bell's deep sound faded into silence. For one heartbeat, neither fighter moved. Zexithera stood tall and confident, her claws gleaming under the arena lights. Jake remained still, his eyes locked on hers. Then Zexithera smiled and began to move forward. She walked slowly, like a cat playing with a mouse. The crowd leaned forward in their seats. This was the moment they had come to see. "Time to die, little human," she whispered. Jake watched her approach. 3 years of observation had taught him everything about how Viridians moved. They were strong and fast, but they had patterns. They had weaknesses. They just didn't know it yet. Zexithara raised her right claw high above her head. It was her favorite move, one that had killed many humans before. She would bring the claw down fast and hard, aiming for the throat. The fight would be over in seconds. She lunged forward with incredible speed. Her claw cut through the air toward Jake's neck. The crowd cheered, expecting to see blood. But Jake wasn't there anymore. He had stepped to the left at the exact moment she committed to her attack. Years of watching Viridian combat had shown him that they always telegraphed their moves. Zexithara's shoulders had shifted slightly before she struck. Her weight had moved to her back foot. Jake had seen it coming a full second before she moved. Zexithara's claw sliced through empty air. Her momentum carried her forward off balance. She had expected to hit something solid. Instead, she stumbled slightly as her claw met nothing. Jake was already moving. As Zexithara's arm extended past him, he grabbed her wrist with both hands. His fingers found the exact spot where her armored scales were thinnest. He had studied Viridian anatomy for 3 years while pretending to be just another stupid slave. "What?" Zexithara gasped in surprise. Jake used her own momentum against her. He twisted her arm and pulled her forward, sending her stumbling across the arena floor. The crowd's cheering died as they watched their champion nearly fall on her face. Zexithara caught herself and spun around, fury blazing in her yellow eyes. "You got lucky, human. It will not happen again." She attacked again, this time with both claws. Left, right, left again. Each strike was fast enough to cut through steel. Each one could have killed Jake instantly, but Jake moved like water, flowing around her attacks. He had spent countless hours watching Viridian guards train. He knew their combinations, their timing, their habits. While they thought he was just cleaning their weapons, he was learning how to defeat them. Zexithara's claws whistled through the air inches from Jake's face. The crowd was silent now. confused by what they were seeing. This was not how the fight was supposed to go. Jake waited for his moment. It came when Zexathera overextended on a particularly vicious swipe. She put too much power behind it, expecting to end the fight. When her claw missed, she was wide open. Jake stepped inside her, guard, and drove his elbow into her ribs, but not just anywhere. He hit the exact spot where viridian nerve clusters were located. He had learned this from watching Lisa treat injured guards. The aliens never suspected that their human doctor was mapping their nervous system. Pain shot through Zexathera's body like lightning. She let out a hiss of shock and staggered backward. No human had ever hurt her before. She didn't understand how it was possible. Impossible, she gasped. Jake didn't give her time to recover. He stepped forward and grabbed her right arm as she tried to swing at him again. This time he applied pressure to the joint where her elbow bent. Another weakness he had discovered during 3 years of maintaining viridian equipment and watching their bodies move. Zexathera's arm went numb. Her claw, which had killed so many humans, suddenly felt heavy and useless. She tried to pull away, but Jake's grip was like iron. "How are you doing this?" she demanded. Jake looked into her eyes. For the first time, he saw fear there instead of arrogance. "You thought we were just stupid animals," he said quietly. "You never imagined we were learning." He swept her legs with a move that looked simple but was perfectly timed. Zexathera's superior strength meant nothing if she couldn't keep her balance. She fell hard onto the arena floor, her back hitting the stone with a loud crack. The crowd was completely silent now. Many viridians stood with their mouths open, unable to believe what they were seeing. Their champion, the proud warrior who had never been defeated, was lying on her back while a human stood over her. Zexathera tried to get up, but Jake was already moving again. He dropped down beside her and wrapped his arm around her neck. But this wasn't a chokehold meant to crush her throat. This was something much more precise. Jake's fingers found the pressure points on either side of Zexathera's neck, another thing he had learned from 3 years of careful observation. Viridians had the same nerve pathways as many Earth animals. Apply pressure in the right place, and even the strongest creature would fall unconscious. "This is impossible," Zexathera whispered as darkness began to creep into her vision. "You are just a slave." "No," Jake said softly, his voice barely audible over the shocked silence of the crowd. "I was never your slave. I was a prisoner of war. And prisoners of war never stop being soldiers." Zexathera's eyes widened as she finally understood. Then they rolled back in her head, and she went limp. Jake held the pressure for a few more seconds to make sure she was completely unconscious. Then he stood up slowly and looked around the arena. The silence was complete. Thousands of viridians stared down at him in shock. Their champion lay motionless at his feet. The human slave they had mocked and laughed at had defeated their greatest warrior in less than 30 seconds. In the human viewing cage, Lisa had tears in her eyes. Not tears of sadness, but tears of pride. The other human slaves were standing now, staring at Jake like they had never seen him before. Dr. Kim whispered, "How long has he been planning this?" 3 years, Lisa said quietly. "Every single day for 3 years." High Commander Krelnoth leaned forward in his command box, his yellow eyes fixed on Jake. The old Viridian's expression was unreadable, but Lisa could see his mind working. He was realizing that everything they thought they knew about humans was wrong. Jake stood in the center of the arena, breathing hard but not from exhaustion. The fight had lasted 28 seconds. He looked up at the crowd of silent aliens and spoke in a voice that carried to every corner of the arena. "You kept us as slaves for 15 years, he said. "You thought we were weak because we didn't fight back. You never realized we were studying you, learning everything about you, waiting for the right moment." He looked down at Zexathera's unconscious form. "You made one mistake," he continued. "You assumed that surrender meant defeat. But sometimes surrender is just another kind of strategy." The crowd erupted. Some Viridians screamed in rage. Others demanded his immediate execution. A few just stared in shock, beginning to understand the implications of what they had just witnessed. But Jake wasn't finished. He had waited 3 years for this moment, and he was going to make it count. "We are not your property," he shouted over the noise. "We never were. We are human beings, and human beings remember everything." In the command box, High Commander Krelnoth slowly stood up. His voice boomed through the arena speakers, cutting through the chaos. Silence. The crowd quieted, though the tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Krelnoth looked down at Jake with new eyes. "The human has won," he announced. "By the laws of combat, he is free to go." But Jake shook his head. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. "Not yet. Not until every human on this planet is free." The arena exploded into chaos again, but this time Jake was smiling. The chaos in the arena was deafening. Viridians shouted and hissed at each other while Jake stood calmly in the center of the fighting circle. Some aliens demanded his death. Others called for an investigation. Many just stared in shocked silence. Commander Krelnoth raised his clawed hand for quiet. It took several minutes for the crowd to settle down. When they finally did, the old commander's voice echoed through the arena. "Bring the human to my chambers," he ordered. "Immediately." Guards surrounded Jake, but they were careful now. They had all seen what he could do. Even unconscious, Zexathera lay crumpled on the arena floor like a broken toy. The guards kept their distance and pointed their weapons at him. Jake walked peacefully between them. He showed no fear, no anger, no excitement. He had waited 3 years for this moment. Now that it was here, he felt only calm determination. In the human viewing cage, Lisa watched them take Jake away. Her heart was pounding, but not with fear. With hope. For the first time in 3 years, she felt real hope. "What do you think will happen to him?" whispered Dr. Kim. "I don't know," Lisa replied. "But I don't think this is over." She was right. Even as Jake was being led away, something was happening across the colony. Other humans were moving from their workstations. They moved quietly and carefully, but they moved with purpose. In the machine shop, Pete, the old factory manager, opened a hidden panel in the wall. Inside were tools that looked like maintenance equipment but weren't. Human hands had modified them over months of careful work. In the medical center, Dr. Sarah Williams accessed the Viridian computer system using codes she had memorized while pretending to treat sick aliens. Her fingers moved quickly across the keyboard. In the communications tower, 3 humans who were supposed to be cleaning equipment instead began disconnecting key systems. They knew exactly which wires to cut and which circuits to disable. Jake's victory had been more than just a fight. It had been a signal. Meanwhile, Jake was brought before High Commander Krelnoth in his private office. The room was large and cold, with weapons from many worlds hanging on the walls. Krelnoth sat behind a desk made from black metal. "Sit," the commander ordered. Jake sat in the chair across from the desk. His hands rested calmly in his lap. He looked directly at Krelnoth without fear. "Explain to me how you defeated Zexathara," Krelnoth said. "I studied your people," Jake replied simply. "For 3 years I watched and learned." "Impossible. You are a slave. Slaves do not have the intelligence to learn complex combat techniques." Jake smiled slightly. "That was your first mistake, thinking we were too stupid to learn." Krelnoth leaned forward. His yellow eyes studied Jake's face. "What do you mean? You gave us jobs fixing your equipment, cleaning your weapons, maintaining your computers, working in your medical facilities. You thought we were just mindless labor, but we were gathering intelligence." The commander's expression darkened. "Intelligence for what purpose?" "To find your weaknesses, to learn how your technology works, to map your facilities and understand your military structure. You speak as if this was organized, as if you were all working together." "We were," Jake said calmly. "Every human slave on this planet has been part of the same mission for 3 years. Krelnoth stood up quickly. "That is impossible. We monitor your communications. We watch your activities. You watch what we wanted you to see." While you were laughing at the stupid humans cleaning your floors, we were memorizing the layouts of your buildings. While we were fixing your broken machines, we were learning how to break them properly." The commander walked to his window and looked out at the colony. Lights were starting to flicker in different buildings. Some communications towers had gone dark. "What is happening out there?" he demanded. Jake looked out the window too. "Your slaves are going home." An alarm began to sound somewhere in the building. Then another. Krelnoth grabbed his communication device and barked orders into it. The responses he got back made his scales turn pale. "The power grid is failing in sectors 7 through 12, reported one voice. "Communications are down across the eastern districts," said another. "The weapon storage facilities have been sealed from the inside," came a third. Report. Krelnoth turned back to Jake. "You planned all of this. Not just me. All of us. Every human on this planet has been preparing for this day. But why now? Why today?" Jake stood up slowly. The guards raised their weapons, but he made no threatening moves. "Because today, you learned that you were wrong about us. Today, one human defeated your champion in 30 seconds. Today, you realize that we are not the weak creatures you thought we were." The door to the office burst open. Zexthara stumbled in, supported by 2 guards. She was conscious now, but barely. Her eyes were unfocused and she moved like someone who had been hit by lightning. "Commander," she gasped. "The human. He knew exactly where to strike. He fought like he had studied our anatomy for years." "He did," Krelnoth said grimly. "They all did." Zexthara looked at Jake with new understanding. "You were never really slaves, were you?" "We were prisoners," Jake replied. "There's a difference. Slaves accept their fate. Prisoners plan their escape." Another communication came through Krelnoth's device. "Sir, humans are leaving their quarters across the colony. They're moving in organized groups. They seem to know exactly where they're going." "Because they do know," Jake said. "We've been mapping this place for 3 years. We know every corridor, every entrance, every weak point." Krelnoth's claws scraped against his desk. "What do you want?" "Freedom for every human on this planet, safe passage to our ships, and a guarantee that you will never attack Earth again. And if we refuse?" Jake smiled. "Then you'll learn what human guerrilla warfare looks like. We know your technology better than you think. We know your tactics. We know your weaknesses. And we have nothing left to lose." The lights in the office flickered and went out. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, but the message was clear. The humans had more control than anyone had realized. "You have been planning this since the day you arrived," Krelnoth said. "Since before that," Jake replied. "Earth's government knew we couldn't win a direct war against you, so they chose a different strategy: strategic surrender, long-term intelligence gathering, patient preparation." "The war never ended," Zexthara whispered. "You just changed how you fought it." "Now you understand," Jake said. "We didn't give up. We went underground. We let you think you had won while we prepared for the real battle." Krelnoth was quiet for a long moment. Outside the window, more lights were going out across the colony. In the distance, they could see groups of humans moving through the streets. "How many of your people are involved in this?" the commander asked. "All of them," Jake replied. "Every human slave on every world you control. We've been in contact with each other for over a year now. Today's signal has reached them all." "Signal?" "My victory over Zexthara. It told our people that the time had come." Another alarm started sounding, then another. The Viridian colony was falling apart from the inside, and there was nothing the aliens could do to stop it. Krelnoth looked at Jake with something that might have been respect. "You have been very patient," he said. "Humans are good at patience," Jake replied. "We're also very good at remembering, and we remember everything you did to us." The door opened again. This time it was Lisa, followed by a group of humans. They were no longer wearing slave collars. They walked like free people. "Jake," Lisa said, "it's time to go home." Jake nodded and turned to Krelnoth. "Commander, I believe we have some negotiations to discuss." The Zirin ambassador stepped off the shuttle and onto the cold concrete floor of the Earth Diplomatic Center. Behind him, his aides followed, eyes scanning every corner of the room like they expected a trap. Maybe they did. They had good reason. Just a few months ago, the Zirins thought humans were weak, primitive, barely spacefaring animals who needed guidance or control. Now they weren't so sure. The humans had taken a Zirin command station with no warning, no mercy, and no need for permission. They didn't bomb cities, they didn't burn ships. They just showed up, took what they wanted, and left without a scratch. And they did it all with respect. That was what scared the Zirins the most. A human soldier met them at the door. Tall, quiet, and dressed in plain black clothes. He didn't smile. He didn't salute. He just nodded once and said, "This way." The ambassador followed. His name was Veller. He was high rank in the Zirin hierarchy, but right now, he felt like nothing more than a guest in someone else's house, and not a welcome one. As they walked through the halls, he saw something strange on the walls, not paintings, not statues, photos. Some were old, some were new. All were humans. A farmer holding a shovel, a woman fixing a broken engine, a child playing in the rain, a man in a suit smiling next to a rocket, another man standing alone on a battlefield. One photo caught his eye. It was of a man, in uniform, face calm, eyes sharp, standing next to a Zirin warrior, the same one who had laughed at him, Cathara. Below the picture was a short line. He crushed her in under 30 seconds. Veller swallowed hard. He remembered when Cathara returned, home after that fight. She was unconscious for 2 days. Her jaw was broken, her pride even more so. No one had ever disarmed a Zirin warrior so fast. No one had ever made one look so small. And yet, the man who did it didn't ask for power, didn't demand revenge, didn't even take credit. He just walked away. Veller looked back at the photo. He whispered to his aide, "We should never have called them slaves." His aide replied, "No, sir. We should never have called them weak." They kept walking. Inside the meeting room, the air was cool. The table was long. At the far end sat 4 humans, 2 men, 2 women. None wore fancy uniforms. None carried weapons. They just sat there watching. Veller sat down across from them. His aide stood behind him. One of the humans leaned forward. Her name was Maya Torres, former Navy SEAL, leader of the team that took the Zirin station. She didn't waste time. "You came here to talk," she said. "So talk." Veller cleared his throat. "We wish to reopen diplomatic relations." Maya took a slow breath. "You attacked us first. Our people acted out of fear," Veller said. "Then your people are stupid," said Derek Hale. He was sitting next to Maya, silent until now. Veller looked at him. "You speak?" "I do," Derek said. "When it matters." There was a pause. Then Maya spoke again. "What do you want from us?" Veller hesitated. "To understand. To learn. To avoid future conflict." Maya smiled. Not a happy smile. A cold one. "You tried to make us your servants. Now you want to be our friends?" "We were wrong," Veller said. "We see that now." Derek held his gaze. "Seeing isn't the same as learning." Veller looked at each of them. "What do you want in return?" Maya leaned back. "Nothing." Veller blinked. "Nothing?" "We don't want your money," Maya said. "We don't want your land. We don't want your ships." "Then what?" Veller asked. Derek answered, "Respect." The word hung in the air. "You treated us like trash, like animals, like tools. We don't want anything from you. We just want you to remember. We are not yours. We are not weak, and we will not be controlled." Veller looked at the others, then back at Derek. "What happens if we forget?" Derek smiled. "Then we'll remind you." Again, silence. But this time, Veller didn't feel like he was in a meeting. He felt like he was being warned. Later that night, Veller stood outside the building looking up at the sky. Above them, stars blinked silently. Next to him stood his aide. "Do you think they'll attack us?" the aide asked. Feller shook his head. No, they don't attack unless they have to. Then why are we afraid of them? Feller looked at the city lights below. Because they don't need to. They win by being better than us, smarter, faster, stronger, and they don't even try. The aide frowned. They're just humans. Feller turned to him. No. He said, there's something new. Something we've never seen before. He looked back at the stars. They don't follow rules. They don't bow to power. They don't care about titles. He paused. They care about doing what's right, and that makes them dangerous. The aide said nothing. They both watched as a ship lifted into the sky above. A small human vessel, sleek and fast, heading to the stars, heading where no one had dared send them before. On board the ship, Derek stood near the window, looking at the planet shrinking behind them. Maya joined him. You think they learned their lesson? She asked. Maybe, Derek said. But it doesn't matter. Why not? Because we're not done yet, Maya smiled. Good. I was getting bored. Derek looked at her. We're going further out. Other systems, other species, some might be friendly. Some won't. And if they call us slaves again? Derek turned toward the front of the ship. Then we show them what happens when you underestimate humans. The engines roared, and the ship vanished into the dark.